It's episode 2 of the CX Mixer podcast. In today's episode, I'm joined by Michael, formerly with Hexclad, now with Fanatics Live, and Taylor at Nathan James. Today's episode is called The Fine Print, Fighting Fraud Without Losing Customers. We jumped into a lot of different topics around return fraud, policy abuse, warranty fraud, a lot of actionable insights into this one. Let's jump in and take a listen. Hey, welcome back. It's episode 2 of season 2 of the CX Mixer podcast. Say that 5 times fast. Today, I'm joined by 2 of my friends, Taylor from Nathan James and Michael, formerly Hexclad. I think that's where most people know you from, but now Fanatics Live. Thanks for joining us, you guys.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Larry.
I think I was just joking before we started recording that I wanted you both on last season, but Michael went and left Hexclad, so now we had to wait till he got settled in. But I think, Taylor, we've been waiting to kind of have this conversation around fraud for a while, right?
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed I didn't make the season 1. I didn't know. Wasn't sure what the deal was there, but yeah, I'm glad to finally be here.
That's fine. Now you can be one of the alumni. One of the things that I like to do when we start off an episode is really get to understand kind of like where your team sit at each of your companies. I think one of the biggest, and I say this all the time, biggest misconception is that these customer experience teams are large. And when you get into, really understanding brands, sometimes they're small but mighty. And I think, Taylor, maybe we start with you first. Like Nathan James, big furniture brand, big in D2C. What kind of a team is supporting you?
Yeah, so right now we have 21 frontline, what we call customer happiness agents. And then I also have 2 team leads and me.
So, Michael, now you're at Fanatics Live. And I think when people think Fanatics, they think of the, the like NFL.com, NBA.com, but you're in like a really cool section of Fanatics, which I've learned a lot about from chatting with you, which is this whole live streaming of opening cards and kind of like virtual pack breaks and stuff like that. I mean, a big switch from what you were doing at Hexclad.
Yeah, it's crazy. I like to say that it's a marriage of all my past jobs culminating into this role that I'm in right now. We have both our sellers and our collectors, and we operate as a platform on Fanatics Live. And so, very much like what I was doing at Lexus, we were the car manufacturer. We didn't sell the vehicle, but we had to act as an intermediary between the seller and the collector, and that's what we do now. And so it is very interesting. And then there's also another aspect of it on the collect side, where we have collectors that purchase things from our physical vault, that either they'll sell it or they'll purchase it on auction or fixed price, and then have them either revaulted into their account or have them sent out directly to them.
Yeah, and I think when I think about like my purpose behind CX Mixer, it's obviously the idea of taking 2 brands, mixing different ideas, getting 2 different setups. And I think people might think that I was a little crazy when I thought of the fraud episode and I thought furniture and trading cards. But I know from talking to both of you, like, and I'm talking to all these brands that I talk to on the podcast, like fraud is a big issue for brands. And I think we tend to think of fraud like from a consumer standpoint, you think of fraud as like, hey, credit card theft, sketchy orders, but it obviously takes a lot of different forms. What, maybe Michael, keeping with you, what is something that you think about fraud looking like from a customer experience perspective?
I think, to your point, Larry, fraud looks different and shows its face in different ways. We've seen it here at Fanatics with new user sign up. Like when someone gets a bonus for signing up as a first time customer, taking advantage of that. Giveaways. We run giveaway promotions in our stream, or our sellers do, and there's people that are only participating for giveaways. We've seen where customers will try and do return fraud from our vaults, claiming that something arrived damaged. And then there's obviously the payment fraud that most people know and associate with what I call fraud.
Yeah, like the actual fraud that most brands are thinking about, right? Like I feel like
Exactly.
nobody cares about credit card fraud anymore, right? Like you care about it, but it's not really what's keeping you up at night. And I think Taylor, we talk about this too. Like when you think about like, and I don't want to speak for you, but we talk a lot about like policy abuse and people taking advantage of kind of like the what can they keep, what can't they keep when it comes to these big heavy items. Like you think like, oh, fraud doesn't happen. Like I'm sure people are like, oh, fraud doesn't happen in furniture, right? So when you're sitting here thinking, and when I know you talk to a lot of other brands, like what do you think fraud looks like from a customer experience perspective for you now?
Yeah, we do still have the payment fraud, and kind of the more, I guess, traditional fraud, like that. And now we have some of the most customer friendly policies that you can possibly have. We offer free shipping, free returns. You get 100 days to decide you want to return something, lifetime warranty. So we have to be very careful. And make sure that we are vigilant in we like these policies for our good customers, and I think the bad actors fortunately are very few and far between, but we do need to keep an eye out, so that when we do one of them finds us, we can spot them and kind of prevent them from continuing to abuse our policies.
Yeah, and I think as we jump into the first segment, and I've said this to you, Michael. I think I just said this to you last week. Like you guys both, while your customer experience, you remind me more of tech people, right? Like you know technology, you understand how it works for your brands. I see you guys educating other brands all the time on how to leverage technology and set up flows and stuff like that. So excited to kind of jump into some of this stuff and see what takeaways we can get. And the first segment is always a good one. It's the CX playbook. So, what's one tactic, policy? You mentioned this Taylor policy things, experience shift you've made that you think has maybe helped reduce like abuse without hurting your best customers. Maybe Taylor, we'll stick with you since you talked about how you have all these really friendly, customer friendly policies. Like, what's something in your playbook that sort of helps to reduce people taking advantage of it?
Yeah, I'll say first, and I think this is maybe something people overlook. Make sure your team knows what to look for, especially with some of the more unique types of fraud. Uh, I'm really familiar with triangulation fraud, and it's kind of a crazy one. And I found that once I made sure that my team actually understood like what was happening, what the end game was for the fraudster, like who the victims are in the fraud scheme. It made it so much easier for them to be able to identify it, and then kind of take action from there.
I don't think I know.
And then in addition to,
What's triangulation?
yeah, so triangulation fraud is, so you have the merchant, so Nathan James, let's say, and then you have the fraudster who will create. They could do it a few different ways. Let's say they create a just a storefront, and they post Nathan James products for sale, and then you have you have the victim of fraud, the victim of credit card, a stolen credit card. So a real true person who's looking to buy Nathan James furniture will go and find the fraudster's fake storefront, and they'll buy something from there. And then the fraudster will use stolen credit card information to buy that item from us. And then they'll ship it to the legitimate customer who just wants Nathan James furniture. So there's a lot of different people involved. And that one's kind of hard. It can be really tricky to kind of pinpoint exactly what's going on. But yeah, so the other thing I was going to mention to kind of have is tracking. We're working now on return tracking for returns and like repeat returners and things like that is something that we've been doing, and we're also working on more thorough tracking of refunds.
Mm.
Shopify doesn't really give you a great way to do that natively within the platform, so we're kind of building something external to make sure that we're able to keep track of like why refunds are issued and if they're being issued for the same customer multiple times over different orders, and things like that. So yeah, educate your team and track.
Yeah. And I think that's super important, especially as you get into a busier season. Like I've been talking to a lot of brands around like ramping up BPO agents and stuff like that, but empowering them to understand like how to combat fraud as well. And I think knowing just your space, there's this balance between, and obviously we don't want to tell people how to game the system, but there's some things where people can purchase something and maybe it makes more sense for them to keep the product than send it back. And I think like that's really important to know who is a VIP customer, right? Who's frauding, who actually is somebody who just is like, I saw this with some mattress brands where people were saying on Reddit, oh, if you order from, and I won't say the brand name, but I think they've changed their policy. If you order from XYZ brand, they're just going to say, go ahead and keep it, right? Their 100-day policy, sleep on it policy. And so then people were now calling, getting this nice mattress and then being like, oh, I changed my mind. And the brand is saying, go ahead and keep it, right? That's really like sometimes I don't think people realize how larger items are really rife for policy abuse. And so being able to like, empower your I love that too, like empower your team to know when they see fraud, because I think some of that stuff, and I feel bad for your industry, there's a lot of stuff that's not able to be automated for fraud and policy abuse for you because it's such like a gut feeling still, like there is for some credit card and checkout fraud and stuff like that. Michael, what about for you? I mean, you now are in two different worlds. You came
Yeah,
from heavy, expensive stuff to trading cards and all types of stuff. What's something in your playbook now or from your old world?
I think for me, what I take to every business is understanding trust, right? And what I mean by this is from the policies that organization creates, reverse engineer that policy and figure out how it can be exploited, and then understand the trust that you have in the customer that's going to utilize that policy, right? And so if we think about returns and return abuse, most of the time return abuse or return fraud is done by someone that is making a return for the first time, right? They're testing the waters to see if they
Mhm.
can get away with something. And so, you might make your return policies a little bit more cautious for someone that's done one or two purchases versus someone that's maybe now on their sixth or seventh purchase from you, right? And we saw this a few years ago when companies were doing refunds on pickup scans,
Mhm.
right? They were trying to make it very easy for customers to, return a product and repurchase. The downfall is that bad actors saw that and exploited it right away. And so one of the things that we did at Hexclad was we did not refund until that item was checked in. However, as we got to know customers, we could change that policy and say, hey, if this is a ninth time customer or sixth time customer, we'll go ahead and refund on uh, delivery or on carrier pickup, right? Because there's more trust in that customer. Um, and then also, I think thinking about how things can be exploited, you can work backwards and say, okay, if someone's going to take advantage of my free return policy, maybe I set up free returns for things that I know should be free because it's a great experience, such as item received damaged, wrong product, uh, exchanges is a good one, right? If I know that they're going to come back and make another purchase, then yeah, why not make the return for free?
Mhm.
And so just thinking about how the trust that we put into a customer and how that factors in can help dictate a lot of the policies that you put in place as an organization.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of the conversations that I'm having with brands too around like you can't have a one size fits all approach for returns and exchanges and every customer. It's really around segmentation, and that helps, while maybe not outward fraud prevention, it helps to reduce like abuse, right? Because you're not treating everybody the same. um and I think too, something, maybe this is kind of a quick pivot, but the idea of free returns, I feel like you and I posted about this on LinkedIn maybe like a month or so ago, where it's like, is free returns really something that brands need to do? I mean, maybe quick hot take, like, do you think like that's because I feel like that's a barrier for return abuse, right? Like if somebody has to pay for returns, that's a nice barrier for return, like not abusing that policy. But I think brands are caught in this area of like, oh, but is it a bad customer experience? And I want to get your take because Taylor, you guys have it. I know at Hexclad and Michael and previous brands that you worked at, it wasn't something you offered. So maybe Taylor, quick thought on
Yeah.
brands have free returns.
Yeah, I think it depends, largely on your margins, the product you're selling. A lot of those types of factors you have to take into consideration. And then also, like Michael mentioned earlier, the type of return. I think it makes sense for certain types. They should be free. The customer absolutely should not be paying for, like, if they received a damaged item and you're asking them to return it, do not make them pay for it. Um, but yeah, if they are like, oh yeah, I was, shopping late at night and, made an impulse buy and now I've changed my mind. I think you have a little bit more leeway there to say, okay, well, you're gonna have to pay to send that back. Um, but yeah, lots of factors to consider when you're
Yeah,
making that kind of decision.
but it doesn't
Yeah,
feel
I
like
think
customer acquisition, right, Michael? Like you guys never had that issue at Hexclad.
right. Well, I think it goes back to um, are you I've talked, I've spoken to many vendors in the past, and when you're trying to negotiate contract with SaaS providers, one of the things that many people always ask for is an opt out for convenience, and many times, SaaS providers are like, no, like we need to plan for this money, and like we do a lot of work. Um, but the same thing for returns is like, are you returning for convenience or are you returning because there's something wrong with the product? Or did we incorrectly set wrong expectations, which is prompting you to return something? I love the furniture industry, and I've never told Taylor this because like there's so many unique things about the furniture industry because one side of your mind goes to, yeah, like who would buy something online, such a big purchase, and have it delivered with the fear of like not liking it or
Not
whatnot.
liking it, yeah.
But on the flip side is like Taylor now has to worry about like how well are we doing to describe this product to the customer, right? Are we setting the customer's expectations appropriately? And then beyond that, it's, do we have the opportunity to pleasantly surprise a customer when that furniture piece arrives? An example of this was, I bought or I got a nightstand, but I was very concerned about like the quality of the nightstand because I saw what materials were being used. However, when I got it, it was far better than my expectations. And so that relieved my fear or need to return an item.
Mm.
So I think a lot of it goes back to how well you're meeting the customer's expectations or delivering on the expectations that you're or promises that you're setting for them.
Yeah, no, I think that's super.
100%.
I agree. I think I talk a lot about also like educating customers helps to, and I think fashion brands do this well. And so it's nice to hear it. Like they'll say, they talk about obviously fit and size and the model is this thing, like all that stuff that you can do on the front side helps to reduce the return. And then hopefully would reduce people that are going to take advantage of it. Because I think sometimes too, there's abusers and there's fraudsters, right? Uh, and they're maybe not always the same. And I think like there's people who are going to take advantage of a gray area, and then there's people who are actually out there saying, "How do I screw this brand over for my
Yeah,
own?"
like it, and it's pretty nice when you only have one selling channel. But if you have multiple, sales channels, such as Hexclad, where we had, we sold in Costco, we sold on Amazon, and we sold D2C, like we saw abusers, using your words, Larry, where they would try and return a product that we know was purchased years back as a new purchase, right? So they would see that we came out with an update to a product. They would order the new product and within their 30-day return window, submit a return for that product and return their old goods. We knew this because each one of our items have a manufacturing date on them.
Mm,
But to the customer, they thought, oh, I can get away with returning something by abusing this policy.
yeah, I think it's a. I think it'll be interesting as we dive deeper because I've got some other questions around technology that I know you've used, Michael. So I think good segue into the next segment, which is my personal favorite. It's the CX confession booth, and I'm excited for this one with you guys because typically when I leave this open to interpretation, we get a lot of like, oh, I created a promo code that went viral and and Taylor's laughing and I mean and Max said it best on the first episode. He's like, if you haven't had a promo code issue as a CX person, like you haven't, are you really in CX? Like that's kind of your trial by fire. Um, and we had a really good one on the last episode with Katie from Simple Modern. But I think what I wanted to target with you guys for this one is maybe narrowing in a little bit more, but like what's a policy or CX moment related fraud or abuse thing that didn't go as planned? And I think even some types like maybe like if we can tie it back to a funny story. I know Michael, you share a lot of stuff on LinkedIn back when you were with Hexclad around the things that these fraudsters did, but just kind of curious, like something that happened around fraud that you want to confess to.
I don't think there's much to confess to per se, but it was definitely a learning opportunity. I think that there are a lot of individuals in the D2C space or in, I guess, e-commerce that think that if you block an address because this person's a known abuser or has done fraudulent activity, that fixes the issue. There was, I don't know where it was that I learned about this. There was I want to say a fraud solution company that talked to me about like, hey, like blocking an address is one thing, but translating that address into a longitude latitude makes it much harder for someone to be able to abuse a like a rule that you have in place, right? Because you no longer are you able to say, I want to block, or my original address was set up as 123 Main Street. And then for your next account, create 123 Main Street, apartment 3, and it be
Mm.
seen as two different addresses. When you're blocking the longitude and latitude, you're blocking their ability to necessarily make a purchase in general, no matter what address, what variance that they put in their address.
And I think I think we talked about this too, Taylor, when and maybe you've got some good stories where you talk about, educating your team on how to identify fraudsters, right? Like, is there ever a time when you maybe thought a actual customer was a fraudster and like learned a lesson from maybe, either like misjudging the intent of a customer or refusing a refund or something like that, like something that has happened with Nathan James?
Yeah. I think early on before we actually so my team, when I joined, we just started doing fraud review. I just had someone from my team basically manually reviewing orders that Shopify flagged as high risk, which was okay. We created some guidelines and it worked pretty well. But it also did result in a lot of legitimate orders being canceled. And it also resulted in fraudulent orders getting through and then becoming chargebacks. So we've had to tighten that up. I think one oops moment that comes to mind was actually when I was with a supplement company, a subscription company, and we were seeing a lot of fraud, and we identified it, so we knew it was happening, but we didn't think like these are subscriptions. Maybe these people are placing orders for subscriptions, and then we're getting like multiple orders every month processing with stolen credit card information. So that happened. And kind of early on, like we knew it was happening, but hadn't been looking into like ongoing subscriptions that had been placed before we started identifying it. So what we would have happen is we would then see like a chargeback come up for a subscription that had processed like 6 times. And so that was kind of a yikes, oops moment. And I would caution anyone working in subscriptions to make sure you are considering that possibility with fraud, and watch your subscriptions very carefully. If you don't already have a tool kind of doing that for you. But yeah, that's kind of the first thing that came to my mind.
You bring
I
up a good point, Taylor, because you made me think about there was a rule that I did put in place with Shopify that said if this is a medium risk order and is a first time purchaser, hold the order for us to review. And I forgot to tell other people about this rule. And so I had gone on vacation or gone somewhere. And so these orders were just sitting on hold that needed to be reviewed and released. And that created a poor experience.
Yep.
and
Yep. I've had something similar happen.
I know. I feel like, Michael, you have a lot of good stories from that I've seen that you post online, like with people returning urns instead of cookware,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And I remember even we did like actually like a return panel a year or so ago where you were sharing some information too around like people who send back empty envelopes and stuff like this. And so I think you've
Sure.
probably seen it all. But obviously we're talking a lot about Hex. I'm thinking mostly about Fanatics too. Like now, how are you telling somebody who thinks they have this like rare Pokemon card or whatever it could be like that this is not a real card? That's a risk.
Well, yeah, it's definitely real and it's definitely out there and it's definitely getting harder to detect with AI. We've seen AI manipulate images,
Yeah.
and customers try and submit those manipulated images to the point where we've had to now ask for video evidence, right? So send us a photo of both or a video of both the front and back of the card showing the damage. So it makes it a little bit harder for someone to manipulate using AI. And then the other one right now that we're running into is because a lot of the value of a card is based off of the quality of the card. Um, some bad actors, I will say. The new thing is to buy a lower graded card, um, crack the card open to obscure the certification number of the card and try and pass that off as the high value card that arrived damaged to them. And so it takes a little bit more investigation. Once again, going back to, hey, if we know who this person is, if they've bought many cards from us in the past, have many purchases from us in the past, our trust factor is a little bit higher than those that, this is their first large purchase from us.
Yeah. And I think that's a great, like talking about AI was big on the handful of episodes, I think this is a good segue into segment 3, which I feel like we'll probably spend a lot of time going through different things. But Designer's Toolbox is segment 3, and this is where I like to ask, what tools, data sources, processes that you guys are using around like detecting and detecting fraud, enforcing policies, to help out your CX team. And so, Taylor, maybe start with you. I mean, we were just at a conference a couple months ago. I know you were kind of chatting with a handful of different technology people. So just curious, as you look at fraud pre-purchase and post-purchase, like what are some things in your toolbox that you just absolutely love?
Um, pre-purchase like preventing credit card fraud and things like that, payment fraud. We're using No Fraud. And really love them. So I mentioned the manual reviews earlier. That's completely eliminated that for us. We no longer have to do those manual reviews, and has kind of like taken that completely. Like my team, we just don't have to worry about it anymore. And the really cool thing about No Fraud that when I first went into looking for a tool to help with fraud, I was just thinking like this is going to help save my team time. I'm going to prevent chargebacks. But with No Fraud, I wasn't even thinking about, so we have payment filters in Shopify that, and this is especially true for furniture. I don't know if it's going to be the same for different industries, but for furniture, somebody's usually buying furniture like when they're moving, they've got a new home, they're building a new home. So there's going to be multiple addresses involved. A lot of times their shipping address is not going to match their billing address.
So true.
And people don't keep up with this. So what was happening with us is we were declining a ton of orders at checkout through the Shopify AVS payment filters. So what we were able to do with No Fraud was turn those off, and now we allow No Fraud to do all of our filtering, and we've been able to pass a ton more revenue every month just by disabling those filters that were, keeping legitimate customers from getting through checkout, and being able to pass those now. So that's right now for pre-purchase. That's kind of my favorite go-to tool.
And are you tagging those customers then that are maybe potential bad actors or flagging? Are you tagging them and then passing that? I mean, I know you both use customer, right? So is there like, how are you passing that information on to your BPO agent? So if somebody calls in, they know that this is somebody, like when we talked a little bit about, uh, educating the agent so that way they can make some of these decisions and know, like, then how are you taking that data and passing it on to them? So that way, if somebody calls in and tries to get around, there's obviously a percentage of people that will just give up after they've been caught. But I find people get more and more bold and they'll call in and see if they can get a live agent and get around it. So I guess I'm asking, how are you passing that data on to those agents so that they can make those decisions?
Yeah, for sure. So typically, so they can access, right now they're mostly accessing the information in Shopify because they spend a lot of time there anyway. You can absolutely pass it through to customer as well. That would be really easy to do. But so if someone, and we do get this, people will call because sometimes even like an order will go into review and it's a legitimate order and they're just waiting to confirm some information with the customer. So we'll just try to get that information, like understand exactly what the issue is, and just kind of verify the legitimacy of the purchase, usually on the phone with the customer. And then from there, we're able to either like give No Fraud the additional details so they can finish their screening or their review, or submit a new order with like maybe update the billing address to what the actual billing address is. And then that order will go through successfully, no problem. So yeah, at that point, it's just like trying to understand. So if someone has experienced a canceled order or their order's in review, understand what the problem is. And then from there, work with the customer to correct it. And then again, this goes back to like making sure they know, like, if someone is a fraudster, being able to identify that when that person calls in. And that's where the other training comes in.
Michael, what about you? What's a tool? I mean, I know you've got a lot, but something that you've used in the past or that you like?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of No Fraud as well. Their team is great. I love the manual review that their team will do on questionable transactions, and they'll base a lot of that review off of um, you know stuff that's relatable to your business and not anyone else's business. We've used Parcel Lab in the past to try and reduce return fraud. That's worked really well. Uh, there's Shopify flows that I've built out that, if you just understand like what shouldn't go together, will allow you to flag things for you. So, a big one for us at HexCloud was, highlight any purchase that has a gift card and an item, like a physical item in there, because if you're buying a gift card, you're typically emailing that to someone rather than sending them the physical product as well. Um, or where uh, there's a gift card um, and a physical item when the ship to address doesn't match up. Um, so there's a lot of different things. One thing that I've recently really been getting into, I'm working with a new vendor. Their name is Sion, and it's really understanding customers' natural habits, so behaviors, when making a particular purchase. And so no longer are you basing your decision off of, one or two different pieces of elements. Um, in your tech stack, but you're also looking at like what is the purchase intention or behavior of someone buying this item. Um, what's the behavior of a first time customer? Is it sign up to purchase right away? I don't think so. Is it someone making a purchase at 1 a.m. Making their first purchase? Probably not. And so there's a lot of different factors, but looking at behavior is a big one for me.
I think, Michael, what do you think? You spent a lot of your time in the Shopify world and now you're not in the Shopify world, right? Um, how do you feel like fraud tools stack up outside of Shopify?
Um, I think for people that have only had experience with Shopify, it's nice. It's nice having everything all in one platform, meaning like all your data coming in from a quick Shopify connection. You do have a little bit more control over, all the different data points coming in, doing it outside of Shopify, obviously. But it's a lot more manual connections, and building those connections in.
I also think too, like, we talked about AI, but we talked about the unique fraud that happens. And I was thinking around like when customers do returns, and I was talking to our friend Fran at Hark a lot about this, right? Like leveraging video uh, in returns approval processes. And I think like, it's so easy. And I think we saw this, Michael, when we talked last year too. Like people will just screen grab, and I don't know, Taylor, maybe you see this too. They'll screen grab a damaged product from Google and insert it into their return, and then try to say like pass it off as that was their product or whatever, right? Or people will share a lot of the same product. But like, what do you guys think about the idea of like asking customers to provide videos as part of their return process?
I love it. I smirked a little bit because I actually had a customer while I was at HexCloud show me her receipt from a Costco purchase, and the member number wasn't on the receipt. The location that I could barely make out on the receipt wasn't anywhere close to where this customer was talking, where they lived. And she said that her husband had purchased it on a work trip. I mean, there's not many people that do a work trip and say, I absolutely need to have this cookware to bring home to my significant other. Not that any that I have met. But then I started getting curious, and said, like, okay, if this isn't the case, like, where did she get this image of this receipt? And so I did a quick Google search of hexclad Costco receipt. And on Google image search, sure enough, I found her image and it was tied back to a TikTok video. And I actually like said, like, unfortunately, we're going to have to decline your request for warranty assistance or your return. Looking at the information that you provided, it matches that of this TikTok video, and I explicitly called her out, and said, therefore, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do business with you moving forward. I love moments like that, selfishly. Um, but it also, like, having all this information in that email to the customer, if she tries to dispute her purchase, if she tries to do anything else, like, we're protected at the end of the day.
Is there a technology out there that like is there I'm sure there's an AI agent for everything nowadays, right? But is there a technology out there that's like scanning tickets of images to see if there I mean if there isn't, somebody needs to create that, right? To make sure that because I learned from my buddy at Yofi that there's whole like WhatsApp and Telegram groups where people will say, hey, use this image. Happens a lot in skincare. They'll
Hmm.
like get a damaged product, they'll be like, use this image on your refund. And then they kind of tell this like fraudster network to go ahead and just use the same image. And if you have a massive team, uh, or you're using, like an outsourced agent, like a lot of brands are using, like they might not see until it's used too much. Like, oh, I just saw that image before. I just saw that image before. Is there a technology out there that's scanning that stuff? No.
I haven't found
There,
one, Taylor. Have you?
Okay.
I have not used one. I know I've had a couple, at least one person hit me up to try to sell me one. I'm trying to remember the name and I can't remember it, but I haven't used it. So, but they claim to be able to do like the scanning and make sure that it's number one, not AI generated, number two, not from a photo on the web. So I think they're out there trying to do it. I don't know if they're successful yet
Well, I
or
think
not.
The
back to
the other
TikTok.
thing that you gotta that the other thing that a lot of people don't think about is, like, it's not just on the web. It could be the customer's image that they're using for a second or third time, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
We had cookware that had a lifetime warranty, and I remember catching a couple customers because within the customer application, the help desk application, you'd be able to see a timeline, and I would see repeated offenders of like warranty claims, and then I would look at their photos and see, like, oh, the the damage on this pan looks a lot like the damage on their new claim, and I would match up, the damage on that original pan and say, oh yeah, it looks like this customer just continued to use their old pan because the pattern matches so closely to what they had originally submitted. And so, like, it's not just the web that you have to be concerned with. It's, we need a piece of technology that can, review the images that a customer sent and review it against a database of previously submitted images.
Yeah. And I think, Taylor, do you feel like videos, I mean, there's a huge part of your policy that's like, hey, did you assemble this furniture? Right. And like being able to say, like, send us a video. I feel like maybe video used to be such an inconvenience for a customer, but even in the last like 6 to 8 months, like it's so easy for people to upload and take a video. Like that's what I've been talking a little bit with, I know we all know Fran, like talking to Fran a lot about is like, how do you start making it easy for customers to quickly provide a video for their return reason because you want or part of their return policy so that way you as a brand too can see also like what are the issues for real returns, you know?
Yeah, I mean, as long as we all have our phones, like we always have our phone just an arm's length away. And so as long as the technology that you're using makes it easy to do that, to access the video and to take the video and to upload the video, which Hark does. Yeah, I think it's great. And for us, we don't necessarily use it for returns yet, but we do. It has been a game changer for us in like warranty claims. Um, and like assembly. So you have to assemble our furniture. So if someone's having trouble with assembly, seeing a video of exactly what they're having trouble with makes it 100 times easier for us to troubleshoot with them and get the problem solved. So that piece for us, I think is huge in video. And that can also help, with preventing kind of abuse of policy as well. If you're getting a video, I think it can be a little bit more authentic than just an image. So yeah, I like videos.
Yeah, and it's almost like a a twofer that you would get if you start including video feedback on your returns, because then you can use that same information and share it with the product team, the packaging team,
Mhm.
and get that feedback right over to those teams to make changes for the future.
For sure. Yeah. A good portion of our returns aren't product issues. It's more like, oops, I thought this was a bar stool and it's a counter stool. So it's too short.
Yeah.
Or I thought this was going to match my existing furniture in my home, but it doesn't. So it's a lot of like issues we can't really control 100%. So returns is less of an avenue for that kind of feedback for us. I mean, there definitely is, but a lot of it's stuff that wouldn't necessarily want or need a video of. But yeah, for sure, for
I'm
product issues,
I'm picturing your agents being like, "No, Michael, that couch looks great in your apartment. Keep it. You don't need to return it. It looks great.
right?
Go ahead.
There you go. What are you talking about?
We talk about that
You
green.
know, one of the
Great.
I remember buying my first piece of online furniture from Wayfair. And we actually did run into an issue with the product when it arrived, and it had, I think, a nick on one of the corners or something like that. And I went through their returns flow, and they asked me, like, describe this nick to us. Like, is it on a scale of 1 to 3? Is it a scratch? Is it minor, or is it major damage? And then based off of that, they would say, okay, do you want to live with it with this amount as a partial refund,
Mm.
or do you want to return it or exchange it for the same item? And I thought that was always smart, because then you're able to, obviously save the sale. But I would venture to think that a lot of returns can be prevented if you uh, meet the customer where they're at and find a creative solution for them that meets their needs, and it's less inventory, return inventory that you have to deal
Yeah,
with as well.
yeah, that's something that we've been talking a lot about lately. We're trying to get there, right, Taylor? Um,
Yeah, yeah, we'll get there.
I think we'll put a little asterisk here because I'm actually Taylor and I are actually going to be at Shop Talk Fall in 3 days or 2 days, and if this episode will come out after that, but we'll include a section if we find a vendor that can do fraud detection across multiple videos and pictures. So we'll see Taylor. That's our challenge as we walk the floor at the
All
conference.
right.
Segment 4. I think this we've talked a lot about this, and I'm going to kind of change this one up a little bit. So this is customer journey spotlight. This is usually where like I ask brands to say what's something in their customer journey that they're proud of. But I think one thing that I'd be interested to hear from you guys, and it doesn't have to be specifically the brands that you represent, but where do you guys see the most friction or risk of abuse in the customer journey, and how should brands clean that up? And I'm thinking, like, when I came up with this question for you guys, I was thinking about, like, these order delivered but not received claims. We talked about refund scams. I think gift card loopholes we didn't talk a lot about. So just kind of curious, like, where do you see for brands an area that they should really? And I know I'm kind of throwing you a curveball here for maybe what you originally thought the segment would be, but Michael, maybe you want to start first.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've learned over the years is when you're able when you're able to prevent a majority of your bad actors initially at pre-purchase, you can start looking at your customers in a different light, and you can start looking at them as assuming good intention behind them. One of the things that I most recently, have seen is fraudsters will try and tug on heartstrings. And your agents mostly don't know any better, and they're trying to provide world-class customer support, and hearing these stories can help, or will most likely um, change their behavior and what they typically would do. I've been fooled by this. I've had the team at the Yofi team pinpoint exactly like some of the um, traits or characteristics of this, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is a clear, heartstring move where they're trying to pull on those heartstrings." I think that's the like being able to properly train all of your agents on signs and characteristics to look out for,
Hmm.
I think is one of the biggest areas of opportunity for businesses.
And do you find that, like, so you'd say probably in the return or refund request, that's where the biggest potential for fraud is for brands, is in that when they reach out to agents, not even so much like the pre RMA automation stuff, but like those ones who are reaching out and trying to like give a story um over email. I That makes
Yep.
me think about like the first episode we of last season. We talked with, True Classic and Tommy John, and they were talking about how many people reach out to say, "Hey, it's our wedding," or "It's our birthday. And I want all this stuff." And I think like, Jordan had shared that, oh, we decided to do something nice and we gifted like a whole, groomsmen situation, a bunch of shirts and stuff. And, there were some people that were impacted by the fires in California. So we gave shirts. And then pretty soon you're flooded with these emails from people saying, I lost everything. It all burned down. I'd really love some True Classic or Tommy John or whatever it might be. And it's like, man, that's hard as an agent to then be like, hey, that's true, that's not true. I think, and I know obviously the team at Yofi too, that they do that bad actor diagnostic. I think that's kind of what I was getting at, Taylor, too, is like telling your agents, like, so that they can confidently turn down fraudsters, because it is such a tough thing, like for maybe more for fashion brands than it is. I don't think anybody is like, well, maybe Taylor, you probably deal with that. People who have house fires and issues and want to reach out and you know try to get new furniture, new things taken care of. But what's something for and for those listening on Spotify, she's shaking her head yes. uh, what's something for you during the customer journey spotlight that you think is like the biggest area? Michael already took the easy one, so you got to really think of some place where there's a bigger area for risk.
I guess what I would caution is not to not to like, if you start seeing the bad actors, and maybe this isn't really a specific point in the customer journey, it's kind of the whole journey, but I think a lot of times people, if they start to see abuse and fraud, they'll act pretty like they'll take extreme actions and like just change their policies completely to make sure that like they're preventing these things. But I think it's less about changing your whole policy to prevent bad actors and kind of everything that we've been talking about, tracking, being diligent about, knowing that fraud is out there and it's going to happen to you. If it hasn't happened to you already, it will. So being diligent and keeping an eye out for it, telling your team what to keep an eye out for. I think all of these things are important so that you're set up to be able to identify it when it does happen, and you can then take steps to address that without changing your whole policy. You don't, like, for us, we don't want to punish our good customers by changing our really customer friendly policies just because we have a few, like less than 1% of our customer base abuses our policies or commits fraud. So I think that would be my point here. I don't
Yeah,
know if this even answers the
Yeah.
question,
no, I
but
think it's good.
yeah.
I think that's like it's so hard for us, Taylor. I'm sure you'll agree with this, but like it's so hard for us in the CX space to remember that the people that we are assisting or blocking, whatever it is just a fraction of our customer base, right? Because we're so inundated with looking at similar things day in and day out that it makes us start to think like all of our customers are this way. But in actuality, it's a fraction of a percentage.
Yeah, exactly.
I think fraud is emotional for brands too, right? It hurts when like you catch fraud and you see that it got through, and you're like, oh man, like it's more emotional internally as well as it is for like when we talked about, Michael, you mentioned those like emotional stories. Um, I was thinking too, a story that you had told me, Michael, last year around those empty envelopes that you would get, right? Like a lot of people don't realize that, especially if you're making somebody pay for the label or whatever it might be, like the return cost, that a lot of carriers, if it's in an envelope, they don't actually weigh it. So they don't catch that this isn't a 50-pound item or whatever it might be, right? Or that the item's not in there. And then you would get these labels on your desk. And you had a really good flow that you would do when you would get these that wasn't like outright calling them a fraudster, but I think
Yeah.
that's something to highlight too.
Yeah. So what Larry's referencing is it's a type of fraud that a actor will either download a label or purchase a label. Most of the time, they would download the label from your site, uh, and I'll explain why that's important in a little bit. But they would then manipulate the ship to address to a nearby address of your business. Um, then they would slap that label on a bubble mailer or a envelope rather than a box and send it out. They were hoping for one of two things to happen. The first thing is that the UPS or FedEx driver would look at that address on their stop and be like, okay, this package, and this package all needs to be delivered to this location and not actually scan the item because for a lot of carriers, they can bulk mark as deliver all of their shipments in that delivery. Um, and so then they would drop that empty envelope off at a location nearby. They were hoping that then um, a few days would go by and they would reach out to support and say, "Hey, I haven't received my refund yet. What's going on?" They would hope that uneducated agent that is trying to provide world class customer support would look at it and see, "Oh, yep, this was delivered in Los Angeles, California on this date. I don't know why the system didn't automatically process the refund. I'll go ahead and manually flip the switch to allow for the refund to happen." So that was scenario one that they would hope would happen. Um, Scenario two that they would hope to happen is that the package then comes to uh, the intended destination, your location, even though they put a different address in there. Um, but then because they downloaded your label, they would hope that you would then have to open up a shipping insurance claim, right? We got this empty envelope back rather than, these uh, cookware pieces back. Why was this not delivered? Uh, and so then, more than likely, if you're buying insurance on a shipment, they'll approve it right away, which would then mean, okay, you would process that. Um, what we ended up starting to do was like we started understanding the behavior of these customers and that what they were hoping for was a refund and then also product that they could sell either on Facebook Marketplace or offer up and make income that way as well. And so what we would do would we would take pictures of these empty envelopes and we would send a email back to them with an attachment of that photo of that envelope, and we would say, "Hey, wanted to let you know that we received this empty envelope back rather than the product itself. Unfortunately, um, without the product, we're unable to issue you a refund." And then icing on the cake was that we would act stupid in a way and say, if this was unintentional, feel free to send back the product back. And as soon as we get it back, we'll issue you a full refund.
Yeah.
You got to understand that to what Taylor was saying earlier was like these people are going on Telegram um, or a private group and understanding what are things that, what are things that they can do. And many times this is their first time actually trying this bad behavior. And so since they realize that they're not going to get away with it, they're not going to be able to make their money back on selling that privately on Facebook Marketplace or OfferUp. And so they'll send the product back. I would say out of all, I would say 50 emails that we would send to different customers that tried to take advantage of us that way, I would say we got 45 of those orders back,
Mm.
because they realized that they're not going to get that refund from us and that we're on to them.
Yeah, I think that's kind of I remember that story. I was like, that's such a fun, we call it Minnesota nice, like passive aggressive way. Like, hey, I think you forgot your return. Did we make a mistake? Like, and then it's like, oh shoot, I did. Here you go. Here's the product back. I think too, when like you think about all these different ways that fraudsters are trying to get through, like somebody might think like, oh, hey, we're actually like telling everybody how to do it. But I think the biggest thing is saying that brands are actually, they're pretty smart. Like, fool me once, fool me twice type of a situation. Like, then they're learning, and brands are figuring it out, and they know, and that there's some level of fraud, like to what you said earlier, Taylor, that you're just going to know that happens and you take on, and it's the cost of doing business. But like, everybody's getting a little bit smarter, and I think brands are keeping up as fast as the fraudsters are coming up with new solutions, except for that one new brilliant idea that we all have, that everybody heard it here first. It's our idea for checking fraud against TikTok. um I think this is a good way to end, and I'm going to let you guys out of the fraud bubble for this last segment. So the last segment here is the CX Mythbuster, and I think this is just where something you can get off your chest when it comes to customer experience, something that's just a myth that you want to bust and that you wish people would stop believing. And I think you guys are all pretty active on, or you both are active on LinkedIn. You're active on Discord servers and stuff like that. So you hear it all. So just kind of let it go. What's something, Taylor, maybe you first, that you wish people would stop believing around customer experience?
Okay. And this kind of, like, if you're in the industry, you maybe don't believe this as much, but like if I tell somebody's like, what do you do, for work? And I'm like, customer experience, or, I oversee customer service or whatever. Oh, so you're answering emails and phone calls all day. No. Like this episode is a great example. Like, no, we're figuring out how to prevent fraud for our business. We're figuring out like why are our customers returning their products so that we can either like improve our product, or improve the way we're merchandising our product on the website, or like where are we not meeting customer expectations so we can improve that and make sure that customers are like not upset with us. We're not creating friction for them. Yeah, I think that's my myth that I want to bust, is that it's so much, and it varies from company to company too. What I might do in CX is probably way different from what Michael's doing in CX right now. So yeah, I think that's what I would say.
I think for me, and it was kind of hit on earlier, is that free returns doesn't like not offering free returns is going to significantly affect churn,
Mm.
right? It's going to affect conversion of a customer, and w- we saw it firsthand, with um, at HexCloud. Like it doesn't affect conversion. Also, I think one of the fun things to look at is looking at when customers actually do return, like when the likelihood of them returning something is, because you could offer a 100-day return policy if you know that 95% of your customers are going to return in the first 15 days. And you guys look like angels to a customer, knowing that it won't affect really anything.
Yeah. No, and I think that's something too, is like, don't be afraid to try different policies, right? And change it, because that also will help you avoid fraud, right? Keep fraudsters on their toes. But also like knowing that, hey, is it 100 days? Is it 60 days? It's Black Friday, Cyber Monday's coming up. Do we change it then, right? Like, don't be afraid to try things is a big one. And I think, Taylor, what you said for your myth is something that I'm trying to say now. Like, I think the podcast is kind of starting to highlight this for me more, is that CX is an area, like, people think that like, oh, it's a cost center a lot of times, and I think I've said this on every episode now, and I'm trying to show people that like customer experience teams are, you said it, fighting fraud. We should put fraud fighter on your LinkedIn title. Retaining revenue, all these things. Not only do we talk about fraud, but we talked about like, how do you actually reduce the amount of returns that you have, which then saves the company money, helps the bottom line, like obviously helps improve customer experience so that you create repeat purchases. So I think my big thing is always going to be on these mythbusters, that like, this is just proof that CX teams are controlling more than just, hey, I'm answering phones, I'm keeping customers happy, I'm putting out little fires. There's actually, and I think, Michael, you challenged me a lot at this when you were at HexClad, like, hey, how do we retain revenue? How do we increase purchases and make that part of our customer experience, our customer journey? So thank you both for joining the episode. I think we probably could have talked a lot more about different things for fraud. And so if people want to reach out to you, you guys are easily available on LinkedIn. And if you're lucky enough to be invited into the super secret brand chat rooms, I know I'm only probably part of a fraction of them, but that you guys are pretty active there too. But thanks again for joining, you guys. I really appreciate it.
Either payment fraud or return fraud. But now working here at Fanatics, we've seen fraud.
I killed the fly. I got the fly. It's dead. I'm sorry, but it's
great.
Dead.
With no fraud, they're starting to do kind of behavior.
Ted, you can shoot your dog.
Yeah, yell at her.